Welcome to Monarchist Minute. I'm William Stout, and tonight we'll be talking about an array of topics, but our most important topic, and the one we're starting with, is China and its impending financial crisis.
China.
So, to open, what's going on in China? Well, this actually goes back to the 2008 recession, where the state decided in order to artificially stimulate the government by creating large infrastructure projects, similar to what FDR did in the New Deal. A great idea at first. What they wanted to do was massively modernize the Chinese rail system to, one, meet demands for their growing population, and two, help bring more tourists into the inner parts of China. Prior to that, it used to only be popular for tourists to visit the coastal regions of China because it was nearly impossible to get into central China. Not anymore, because they're bringing more and more people inwards using high-speed trains. Now, the issue is these high-speed trains became so successful and so prestigious that the Chinese built too many of them and ended up incurring a massive debt. And now, the Chinese debt is so huge that they can't pay it off. We're talking US levels of debt, if that's too acute, that kind of debt. And now that most of these railroads have become unprofitable because they built them on lines that aren't that popular or aren't that served. So now they are losing a ton of money. They're bleeding heavily. They're forced to raise the cost on these trains, which actually makes air travel cheaper. So they've destroyed the competitivity of their high-speed rail system and are cutting more and more lines to slower tracks, but they still can't cover costs. And this is also affecting investment, which is affecting other markets, the stock market, the real estate market, etc., etc. And basically, the Chinese economy has formed a huge bubble, and it looks like it can burst at any second. So,
Just to put a quick dollar amount on that debt, it is $30 trillion. Repeating, 30 trillion with a TR.
with
Get to the aliens.
Is that the U.S. or the Chinese debt?
That is the I assume that is the Chinese debt.
Both.
Well, that would be 30 trillion yuan. Or
30 trillion US dollars in debt. China, hold on.
No.
Okay, I found it. That was the U.S. debt. It's actually around 7 trillion U.S. or 46 trillion yuan.
Okay, so it's not that bad. But I say it's not that bad, but that's more than I make in a year, so it's kind of bad.
Railroads are the Chinese tulips.
Railroads are the Chinese what?
Tulips.
Tulip? Oh, the tulips. No. As someone who fancies himself as a British railway connoisseur in terms of the history, I can tell you that a nationalized rail network may not be the best idea, especially when you have Dr. Beeching come in and wreck everything and destroy all the local communities that needed the railways to survive. But I guess if they're not profitable, they're not profitable. But obviously, why should glorious workers' utopia be concerned about measly profits?
Exactly.
Because they're a state capitalist society.
The big thing is
it's a for-profit state. They should be worried about profits because their state is literally run for profit.
But the big thing is that China neglected other forms of rail in order to keep building up their high-speed infrastructure. They neglected expanding freight rail. They neglected expanding other forms of passenger rail. And they poured so much money into high-speed rail. And neglecting the freight rail seems baffling to me because the entire time this has happened since 2008, China's exportation has only grown exponentially. They're only selling more and more stuff to the rest of the world. So you think they'd invest billions upon billions of dollars into freight rail in order to make sure products make it to ports, but they haven't.
Well, and the whole thing with the Belt and Road Initiative part of the whole Belt and Road Initiative is ensuring that goods can travel across Asia by a new Silk Road or whatever, and part of that plan involves rail. So underinvestment in the rail network and in freight would probably, but I mean, let's face it, freight locomotives, they don't look as pretty, so that you're not going to put those on the propaganda posters. Although, in fairness, most modern locomotives look, yeah.
When did communists ever care about making things pretty?
I mean, hey, the
did pretty
SKS
well
is a
through
pretty
music.
good-looking rifle.
I mean, yeah, well, of course they made their guns pretty.
The music's pretty good too. Communist propaganda.
There's
It's
only
actually
one good
class.
communist music song, and we all know
Red
what
Sun
it
in the
is.
Sky.
No.
Saigon's
That's the one.
Reality.
That's the
Well,
only
actually,
good one
I mean,
they
here's the
ever
thing,
made.
though. The tune predates the Soviet Union, though.
By like
Exactly.
40 years, yeah.
The only
Honestly,
thing
Something like
those
that.
the bloody tankies are good at co-opting everything that's good and making it bad.
the
Yeah.
Soviet Union may be good, but the real joy of communist music has to be Katusha.
I don't know what that is.
Which one? The
Anyway,
Hoi 4 one? I
going-
think the Hoi 4 one was pretty good.
Yes, anyway, railways. We were talking about railways.
Yes, and they're called railways, not railroads. Anyone who disagrees, you just have to go. But anyway,
Okay, I'm out later.
but anyways, watching, when I was a wee lad watching Thomas the Tank Engine, the U.S. dub didn't change the terminology, so I was indoctrinated with calling them points instead of switches and trucks as opposed to wagons.
Let the Britain flow through you.
Actually, apparently with Peppa Pig,
Yeah.
a lot of young American kids are starting to say like "mama" or "mommy" or like
They're
use British
speaking-
terminology.
yeah, they're speaking
and-
with British accents.
Yes,
yeah.
they're speaking in English accents, which is just. I mean, the British invasion. You think the Beatles would have had something to do with that? But no.
This is Invasion 2.0, mate.
Long
Like
as
you
time
don't
I
even
thought
see it yet.
Beatles were American, because when you listen to their songs, it's not obvious that they have an accent.
Yeah, especially when JoJo was a man from somewhere Arizona. Da 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 da.
Nice.
As an American, can I say the thing that angers me the most about this whole Chinese rail debt crisis?
Is that
Yes.
our rails don't get a dime?
It's that China has spent all this money on beautiful, beautiful high-speed rails they don't need. And yet Amtrak can't even get a decent loan from the government and modernize their fleet.
Well,
Well, that's
here's
because
the
the
thing with
Fed runs
Amtrak.
things different.
Well, here's the thing with Amtrak. Okay, Amtrak was never meant to be a return to the glorious high-speed rail services of the 1930s and 20s and beforehand, which were
No,
essentially.
I know. It was meant to basically make passenger rail a government-owned subsidy so it could die quietly and without
Yes.
being competitive with the interstate highway system. And look how well that has left us.
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing is though, is that there are a lot of poor networks, there's a lot of communities where they rely on Amtrak to get anywhere because even our glorious interstate highway system
Mhm.
doesn't go through there. So that's odd. But yeah, I don't know. Amtrak, I don't know. I mean, if we got rid of if we de-emphasized our nature of roads, maybe passenger services could become profitable. But passenger service in this country, I think, actually started to die before. I want to say before interstate. Before interstate became the concept for specifically the interstate highway system was invented. So, and that was mainly because the mail, which was really what made the whole thing profitable in the first place, started to be sent by plane because plane go vroom.
Right, and mail did
Fly.
make rail very, very profitable. But at the same time, rail became profitable for other places as well. And I feel like the big issue with rail in the US is that we've built our society so incredibly decentralized that it's hard for rail to run at max
Oh
efficiency.
no, Will. It's not because we were so decentralized. It's due to the fact that literally the modern U.S. has been built specifically for cars. That's the
Right.
whole thing. And in fact, there's actually been multiple examples of major U.S. cities in which we had tramways and such in major U.S. cities. And what happened to them is that car companies just bought them out and destroyed them.
Oh yeah,
Speak
GM
language.
GM owned the trams in my town, which sounds like the absolute worst idea I have ever heard.
But Prussian, my friend, you were just up my alley. I was getting ready to get into that topic. In fact, I get into that topic repetitively. Everyone here testified to that. And it's become the running joke that I hate roads. This is why I hate
I mean, roads are pretty cringe though.
They are-
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I have no if you want to take a Sunday drive, whatever. But the way that our society is set up, a massive increase in gas price is actually going to harm everyone, because nobody lives in a reasonable. Very few people live a reasonable distance from work. I mean, I could probably bike to my work, in a reasonable amount of time, but nobody.
Well, you see, I'm actually in a bit of a conundrum because trains and mass transit actually prevents me from biking to work because my job is right next to our major rail yard, and so it's not uncommon for trains to block crossing grades. So CSX, if they really want to rain on my parade, can stop on a track and create a great wall of cars to keep me from getting to my job.
I mean, I live in a suburb, but the problem is that there's basically 5 miles of farmland surrounding my suburb, completely on all sides. So I have to drive everywhere because of the fact there's 5 miles of farmland surrounding me every direction.
It's almost as if we could have some sort of
I don't understand why people desire to build massive housing developments in the middle of a literal cornfield.
Because
Well,
it's
because it's fun.
charming. You get all the benefits of farming without actually having to do any of the work. You get to see the pretty corn, but you don't have to, do anything that's impactful for society.
Everyone
love corn.
wants rural population densities, but they want the urban convenience. That's the basic idea of suburbia. But here's the thing. You can't have that. You can't have urban utilities and it be affordable and efficient without living in a highly populated area, and you can't have rural, the nice, I guess you could say, elbow room of a rural area without sacrificing some of the conveniences. It just doesn't work.
I want all the benefits of having a Walmart, a Best Buy, a Sam's Club,
You forget the Panda Express.
and a major auto depot inside of the same space as inside of a small town with that small town hometown aesthetic.
Honestly, I think the Romans had the best idea. People live in the apartments on top, they run the businesses immediately underneath their houses. You don't have to leave your block for the entire life if you want to.
Actually, yeah, so the nearest town that's nearest to me, there's still buildings like that in that town.
Yeah, I mean, actually, the thing with distributism, you really want to live close to your work, often quite literally. So if you're a farmer, while you live on the farm, but also if you're like a if you're a carpenter, your home would also be the shop where you make the furniture.
Yeah, but we don't really live in a society where the economy is dominated by that kind of work. So,
So does anyone else have anything to say about this topic?
I guess with China as a whole,
Yeah.
I don't want. Okay, I really don't want people to suffer, financially or in any way. But at the same time, this is I mean, it's the logical consequence of the government doing economic action, incentivizing economic action that's going to create a bubble. It's like when the Wall Street crash of the 1920s, the government kept lowering the interest rates to get people to invest, and as opposed to either saving their money or whatnot, and stop creating economic bubbles that will pop and wrecking the lives of your citizenry. Although I'm not sure why I'm trying to explain this to communists.
Isn't
Yeah.
Turkey doing something similar
Good
by
luck with
keeping
that.
lowering their interest rates or something? But
Turkey?
like they're trying to stop inflation, but it keeps going up because they
Oh,
keep
well,
lowering their interest rates,
here-
which is
well,
the
no.
exact opposite of what you want to do.
Well, here's the thing with inflation. Okay, we said it before on this podcast many times that the definition of inflation that all the central banks use today and everyone uses today is not the definition of inflation. Inflation isn't a rise in prices. Inflation is the increase in the currency supply, which typically results in a rise in prices, although not always. The cheap radio that I'm holding right now is both a AM FM radio, a digital clock. They can have 2 alarm settings, and this thing, even without adjusting for inflation, was cheaper than a basic AM radio of 100 years ago. So, but that's with all the inflation.
I'm pretty sure it's more like an increase in money supply relative to the population, not just in like blanket increase in money supply.
That's not the definition I heard, but either. I mean, looking it up in an old dictionary that actually has both the new stupid definition and the old definition, it just said an increase in the currency supply or the money supply, quote unquote.
Increase in money supply relative to the demand of the currency that needs to be used.
Well, no, not the.
Right.
I mean, the thing with the demand of the currency. I mean, currency is just a medium of exchange.
We are
it's not a
okay.
good in of
Let's.
itself.
All right, let's stop talking about.
No, it's fine.
We're not economists.
Well, we're not economists, but not half
You'd like to think
economists
that,
don't know
wouldn't you,
anything.
Victor?
Half of economists don't know anything. That's what we call Keynesians.
You're
I
basically
just got here.
with money.
Did you guys talk about things like the fact that the local governments in China don't really tax people and they make money in other ways that aren't really sustainable?
Like bribes?
Wow,
No, they sell the land in their like the territory that the local government controls, and that's part of the problem is they're running out of land to sell. But that's the main way that they make money, apparently.
It's going to go back to the 1800s. They're going to start selling us treaty ports.
Oh, I can't wait for Shanghai to become the bring back the international legations.
We need
Hong Kong back, bro. We need Hong Kong back. Save Hong Kong.
We buy Hong Kong and then we lease it to Taiwan. There we go.
Buy all the port and then quote unquote lease it to the Taiwanese.
Hey, Peking, you wanna like not be bankrupt? Why don't you just sell us your capital? There you go. And we also start using the old.
Well, I don't know if we should. That we might be spending 55 days in Peking.
Bum 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 bum. Anyways, man, you should pull out your bingo sheets. I'm sorry,
I know that's another one on the bingo right there.
Wait.
It is so. Does anyone have any final thoughts on China? I believe we were already in that sort of vein.
China is huge.
As much as I
China is definitely one of the countries of all time.
As much as I don't wish to see the people in it suffer, I pray for the downfall of the Communist Party.
I, for one, welcome the collapse of our Chinese overlords.
Yeah, I mean, new dynasty time. It's going to be the.
What do you mean? We have the Xi dynasty already.
No, but here's the thing with China. Normally, I'm always for using pre-existing dynasties. Get ready to strike it off your bingo cards because I'm a Jacobite. Anyways, but with China, it seems like they like to have a new dynasty every time. They out with the old, in with the new. So might as well. The Xi Jinping dynasty, the Ping dynasty.
I'm curious.
I despise hearing that, man.
Three Gorges Dam is going to collapse anytime soon, and that will signal the end of the CCP's mandate of heaven.
It hasn't.
Okay,
It
to be
never had
fair, I've
the
been
mandate. It
useful
never
for that
had
for a
the
while.
They had one
mandate.
in the first place.
The mandate
Well-
belongs to the emperor. It does not belong to the fake chairman.
Well, I mean, he is a chairman, but is he really made a chair?
I mean, there was a president emperor at
Alright,
one point.
I
No,
think he's a
no,
man.
well,
he's not a chair, obviously.
Well, you know, but no, I mean
I
the whole
wouldn't call
thing
him a
with
man, honestly.
I mean the whole thing with the mandate of heaven, you know, it's like the heaven that they are talking about isn't the real heaven. So I mean, I don't really.
let's
I mean,
let's
I think the Taiping guys had the right idea when they were talking about the mandate of heaven, though.
Wasn't that like the original KMT that you're talking about there?
No, the Taiping Rebellion.
It
Wasn't
was
that like a
the
bunch
guy
of-
who thought he was Jesus' brother.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, they had
that was kind of
Yeah,
crazy. That was
that's
a
not
moment. That was
how-
a moment. to say the
Okay.
least.
Yeah, remember everyone, as much as we want the Chinese People's Republic to collapse,
It
it
could
would,
always be worse.
it would be incredibly disastrous for all mankind as well as the Chinese people, because I forget how many it is exactly, but several of the most dangerous wars in human history, several of the most deadly, were specifically Chinese civil wars.
I think
Well,
it's
just send
all
in
of them on the
peacekeeping
top
forces.
10 except the World Wars.
Just send in peacekeeping forces.
Yeah,
don't forget about- yeah, don't
not
forget
another
about the,
Afghanistan. You
Rebellion.
want Afghanistan times 100?
No, dude. The
I'm
important
pretty
parts
sure
of
the
China have like
population
big
of China
plains
is
and
like
stuff. It'll be
is a
fine.
lot more than
It's a
Afghanistan.
good thing. We
The
send
important parts of China have like big plains and stuff. It'll be fine.
Yeah,
it'll be
I
okay.
mean, I
send
don't
it.
know. I mean, occupy the coastal ports, create the legation cities. It's all good.
Is this a
Alright.
Reich reference?
Yes. Legation cities are fun. You know, they should, every update, this is what I want from the Kaiserreich devs. Every update, a new, like, little mystery thing to read through with the legation cities where you send the police to investigate something. Like, I want that every update, a new one every
I
update.
played-
But Morealism, though.
I played Kaiser Redux as the legation cities, and I
Kaiser
reformed the
fun.
Great Shang Empire. It was really cool.
Yes.
Kaiser Redux, I tolerated.
The Red
I don't know.
Mini
If they made it more polished, I probably would enjoy it a lot more. But
The
they have like
Red Mini
150
Bird
different
is great.
focus trees, so
That's
it's
the point.
impossible to do. But whatever.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Yes, that's the
And,
point.
Maybe
it is-
we should
it is
probably
fun
probably retrack ourselves right now. I think.
Okay.
Well,
Okay. Here's what we'll
fun,
do.
Let's
getting
derail.
it is getting Bishop Sheen as the leader of America is pretty fun though.
That is true. That is true.
Anyway,
Alternatively,
He wasn't a bishop at the time, was
Redminster.
he? IRL? Wasn't he still a priest during the war? He was
I
just
don't
Father
know.
Sheen. I think he was
Um,
only made a bishop afterwards. Hold on.
The infinite wisdom of Google.
Bishop.
I
I'm
love
already doing
Google.
it.
Maybe we could move on to the next topic.
Okay, well, okay, here's what we'll do. Okay, I will go down the list as it appears on my screen and see if anyone has any final thoughts, if there are no objections. Okay, good. Okay, counter-revolution.
Yeah, what?
Do you have any final thought?
On the whole China
Gave this.
situation?
Yeah, on the whole China situation.
I think you already gave this.
Well, whatever.
When it comes to China, I pray for its swift downfall. Anyway, moving on.
Okay. Prussian.
I don't even know what's happening.
We're just asking for your final thought.
No. I mean, like, I don't even know what's happening in China. That's what I meant.
Oh.
Bishop Sheen was made a bishop in 1951.
Okay.
Oof.
Okay, so it would have been Father Sheen. Although, given Kaiserreich, there's all that time difference. He may have been made a bishop beforehand. But anyways, okay, Darth, your thoughts on China, because you kind of jumped in midway.
My thoughts on China is until the Great Qing Dynasty is restored, I do not recognize either Chinese regime, either on the island or on the mainland.
That is incredibly based, and I agree with that entirely.
Is there even a claimant to the Qing dynasty still alive?
Probably.
It's a dynasty. What do you expect?
There's got to be like a fifth cousin somewhere.
well,
we can make fun of ourselves. Anyways,
it's kind of like the Romanovs. Like people think that like the Romanovs were killed off with Tsar Nicholas, but it's like no, that's just the direct family. Like he had cousins, he had uncles, he had many claimants.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Constantine.
It is what it is. Really, I don't really have anything to say.
Okay, says the man with the Happy Meal box. Koshin?
And furthermore, the Chinese Communist Party must be destroyed.
All right, me?
Based.
Myself? Come on, myself. Come on, come up with something. I don't
No, you
know.
don't have to come up
Legation
with something.
cities. Legation cities. Let's make it happen. Form the legation navy. Okay,
Money,
Victor.
baby, money.
I have no thoughts. Let's move on.
Will?
My only final thoughts is if there's some way that we can magically buy some of those high-speed rails and move them to the US, we should totally do it.
I wouldn't trust
Do
them.
they? Wait. Hold on. Final question.
I agree in principle, but everybody shares the same type of track. We would have to build new track for the high-speed rail to actually be high speed.
Well, yeah, but the other question is, does China? I guess they. I'm pretty sure that maybe they do because most countries use it. But do they use 4-foot 8 1/2 inch gauge, which is the standard gauge for us, the British, most of Europe, but not Russia. Russia likes to be special and have broad gauge. And
If I-
South Africa like to be special and have narrow gauge.
If I remember, high-speed rail has a special gauge for it, but it might be.
No, it would. I don't think it would still run on the same. It wouldn't make any sense for it to not run on the same gauge of track
No,
because how would you get it from the factory to
China
the line?
uses the same. China uses the same.
Okay, so China uses 4-foot 8 1/2 inch. Okay,
Yeah.
because high speed rail couldn't use a different gauge because then you couldn't get the locomotives from the factory to the line they're supposed to be on unless you transported them by rail, which would get a little expensive. So, all right, so we're all done here.
Yes, we are all done, and now
Wait,
we
somebody
go
said
to
wait.
Prussian.
So somebody said wait.
So
Somebody
wait,
said wait.
the benefit of using short gauge like Russia, is there a benefit?
Oh, well, they use I think they use broad gauge. Well, historically, broad gauge locomotives could offer more power per square inch. It was sort of, I think it was like the square cube law. You know how?
I mean, the main reason they did it wasn't because of power or anything. It was just because they wanted to make it harder for countries to invade them.
Oh, well, yeah. So the Great Western Railway originally used broad gauge, and I mean, the locomotives, I guess, unit per unit were more powerful, but I think 4-foot. I mean, how 4-foot 8 1/2 inch became the standard gauge was just kind of accident. It was sort of people just decided that was the gauge to go with, and then everyone standardized around that. Like 4-foot 8 1/2 inch just through random circumstance became the dominant gauge in the North, and then Congress overruled Abraham Lincoln and said, okay, we're going to go with the standard gauge in the North for the Transcontinental Railroad because Lincoln wanted it to be the gauge that was common out in California, but Congress finally did its job and overruled him for once. And then once that sort of became the status quo, the South, which used its own broad gauge, I think they switched over in over literally a weekend. So it was just happenstance that it became the standard gauge. I mean, broad gauge offers some advantages, but at the same time, being broader, you can't fit it in as many places. But standard gauge is sort of good enough, and if you need to go narrower, you just go narrow gauge, like with 3-foot gauge or 2-foot gauge or whatever.
Sweet. Anyway,
I'm sure someone can give a more comprehensive answer.
I think we should move a bit closer to home and discuss what Joe Biden's chatting about nowadays.
Oh well, we have a topic list in order, but
we will go to Prussian now for his back-to-backer. Prussian.
I'm sorry, I didn't know the order.
Exciting, except what we're talking about is not at all exciting and is extremely tragic.
Oh no!
What the?
So, I actually heard about this when I was at community college, actually, because it literally happened 1.5 miles away from me. In the high school of Northside in North Carolina.
Jacksonville, North Carolina, to be precise.
Jacksonville, North Carolina. A student was killed, 2 injured, and a teacher was hurt in a stabbing event. It occurred at 7 a.m., which for y'all who obviously don't know, but in Onslow County, which is the county where it took place in, school starts at 7 a.m. for high schoolers. So literally, as school began, one kid came up, stabbed one kid, killed them, and injured two others and a teacher. We don't know who they are. From what I can check right now, forgive me for kind of just stumbling about this. It's just because it happened so very close to home. Literally, I was very close when it happened. Holy. Yeah. But nothing has been released yet, and it's yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, not to, what's the word I'm looking for? Say something that might be perceived as inappropriate, but now the U.S. has officially had its first school stabbing.
Yeah. The thing, the whole. This is why. At the risk of also sounding insensitive, just simply banning guns is just kind of putting a bullet on a bandage wound, because, or putting a band-aid on a bullet wound, because the mentally ill who are going to think about doing this stuff, they're just going to grab a knife. Now, sure, they may not get as high a body count, potentially, but but at the same time, you're not addressing the cause of why people are going out to begin with. Okay, you wouldn't, if it wasn't for the huge mental health crisis that young men are facing in this country because of because of all these different social factors, like not like absent fathers and all that, um then then you could chuck them a fully automatic M16 and say, have fun at the range, and they just go to the range, shoot a few rounds, and everything would be fine, and if everyone was well, no one would give serious thought to the concept of going up and shooting your classmates, because they wouldn't be mentally disturbed.
This was a stabbing, which
Yeah, I
meant
know it's
that
a stabbing.
they had to get up close and personal.
Yes, I know. That's what I'm saying, because
And I also just want to say that this was on the 4th day of school, 4 days in, and it's like, I remember talking with my mom about it, and she was like, "I don't know how this happens. It's only been the 4th day. Why would you have such beef with somebody else on the 4th day that you would go and stab them?"
The thing is that's the boomer mentality behind all this. They try to correlate it with something when they don't self-reflect upon the society that they forged. Like, they forged a future where younger people don't have any vision of like the future and have nothing good to actually look forward to coming, especially with the inflation, the increasing prices of housing with stagnant wages, the decreased living standards over the decades.
I'd be hesitant to say all that plays directly into school shootings, or in this case, stabbings.
Well,
that seems a little.
Okay, if you actually look at these people, most of the time they come from that same social strata that have no clear future for themselves, and the depression amongst the entire generations, especially younger millennials and older Zoomers, is causing a lot of these incidences to happen, at least on a indirect level, and cannot be ignored as a factor. But it has been ignored by older generations and just try to correlate it to, bad household, bad this, bad that, and not actually trying to do something that will fix the problem.
I think you're underplaying the extent of bad parenting being an element here, of parents not engaging with their kids and not really having any idea what the hell they're doing.
Language.
Sorry, my bad.
Four things I had to remove. Anyways, no, sorry, I just hopped in. So I'll wait for the conversation.
And also having a nihilistic society that's bent upon consumerism and materialism, that's produced by capitalism, and it's a soul-destroying economics.
Yeah, it's
Why? Here's the other question. Why don't we have police guarding schools? Like, why
Oh,
is
we
it
do.
because
No, no,
we-
okay, hold
we
on, hold on.
shouldn't
Okay.
need
There
to
was
have
there.
we
Okay,
don't
stop,
have the
stop, 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 up. There were. Okay, at this school there was 2 police officers that were there. All right, I'm sure now doesn't that just because there's. I mean, we could even look at Uvalde when there was literally footage of the officers just standing,
Well, yeah.
standing around, letting the shooter go around shooting poor children. And I mean, like, not that this happened at this school, obviously, but there were already 2 officers there, and it was right when school began. So like, they couldn't have really been able to react, and there already would have been so many other students around at that point. So I'm just.
no. I mean, the thing is that you shouldn't have to have that. You shouldn't have
I don't
to
agree.
have.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you shouldn't.
You
have
shouldn't
police-
have to, but that's like saying you shouldn't have to have a government. Like, yeah, theoretically,
Well, no.
you know,
But
everybody would do everything good, and you would never have to punish anybody for doing anything wrong because nobody would ever do anything wrong.
no. But you're
people
missing
do
the
stuff
point.
that's
There
wrong.
was a time. No. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for cutting you off. But there was a time in this country. Okay, my former 9th grade theology teacher, 11th grade AP Euro teacher, 12th grade principal. He went. Okay, his uncle or whatever. He was telling us a story, right? Because he was in college or whatever over in Europe, right as shoot, what was that first school? Columbine happened, and he was telling us the story that his uncle or I think it was his uncle or whatever, when he was a kid, he took one day off every year to go with his dad duck hunting or something. Well, the ducks happened to be on the school ground, and they moved from one side of the school ground to the other side of the school ground. So he just walks through the school, and the principal like stops him and says, "Hey, what you doing?" It's like, "Going duck hunting." Okay, and then he walks out the other way and continues on his merry way. I mean, that should be, and I'm not saying you should just walk through a school with a gun. I'm not saying that. I mean, even if you don't have any malicious intent, like, I'm just saying, like, hallways.
And there's a reason why people back in the halcyon days of the 70s, if they had a gun in their car, it was in the trunk. They left it in the trunk.
Well, no, I mean,
Look,
well, then you can't
if
get to it if you need it. But
if we
no,
use armed officials to guard our politicians and whatever, I don't think it's unreasonable to say we should guard our society's children.
oh, I
think
think
that makes a lot
that's
of
a
sense.
reasonable.
That's a fairly recent phenomena, though. Like the
Yeah.
guard, like the whole security apparatus around the president used to be a fraction of the size that it is today. Today
Yeah,
is
and presidents
way
get shot.
overbloated because, well, okay. Besides that point, like the presidents actually used to be able to even be approached in the White House. It's like there was literally like accounts of back in the day where I think it was like Woodrow Wilson even had like random civilians walk into the White House and just like have a talk with him. Like that's how approachable our politicians used to be.
I'm not saying that's bad, but like, I don't think it's unreasonable. I mean, you're saying, well, no, but you know, the president being heavily guarded is recent. Well, yeah, but I mean, like, there were a bunch of politicians from earlier in the country that got shot. Abraham Lincoln got shot. Garfield got shot.
McKinley.
You know, like, yeah. I mean,
Nobody remembers McKinley.
you know, I don't actually think that this is, you know, people trying to shoot politicians is not a new phenomena, regardless of whether or not the heightened level of security is a new phenomena.
Yeah, no, but I think what we're trying to say, I think what Darth is trying to say, and I guess what I'm trying to say, is that I don't think it's a bad idea to have police guarding our children. But there was a time in our country, but in some instances that might not be practical, like to take the town of Flint, Michigan, for example. It
Don't drink
has
the
the
water.
lowest proportion of police to residents per capita in the country, or at least it did a few years ago. So it's not feasible for the police force to have an officer at every school, because let's say one officer in every school, and let's say there's 5 elementary schools, private and otherwise. There might be more, and a couple high schools. in the city. So that's 7. That's 7.
All right.
That's
I'll admit,
7% of the city of that's 7% of Flint PD's manpower. That's not
that's
feasible.
fair enough. I don't really know much about like that side of things. So
Yeah, but I mean, I think
mean,
what my main
I think
point is. My main
I
point
think I
is.
would. Sorry,
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry. So okay, I think my main point is that may be a way of deterring school shootings, but the primary focus should be addressing is actually considering ways to solve the societal problems facing our country. Like the fact that most of these school shooters either had absent fathers or fathers they didn't have. These young men didn't have good relations with.
Oh, I
Um,
agree with that completely.
so the primary solution should be to solving these social problems, giving these kids something to look forward to. Telling them it's okay to have a dream for the future and that you're not necessarily doomed to a worthless 9 to 5 desk job where you're not actually going to see anything tangible you've done. I mean that.
And even the 9 to 5 desk job is basically absent in an area in a lot of the old coal mining towns of West Virginia.
Well, yeah,
West
no, but
Virginia has a huge, and I'm actually going to make a point with this. West Virginia has a huge opioid problem
well, yeah, because there's
because,
nothing to live for. Sorry,
yeah,
sorry for
because, well, yeah, well,
sorry for making
well,
your point for you.
well, yes, because all of the coal mining jobs got extinct, and the people that were just stuck there have basically nothing to do and essentially nothing sort of to live for. And yes, while there may be new jobs created, tell that to the 50-year-old that was in the coal mines his whole life. They just closed. Surprise! What are you going to do now? You're 50. You can't afford to retire, but you're also not skilled in anything other than mining coal.
Yeah,
Another
and
thing that happened in
Love
West
coal.
Virginia, and this is why there's actually abandoned trailer parks over West Virginia, is when the Black Lung lawsuit happened.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of them ended up buying into these trailer parks and these places for them to depreciate in value and basically leave them stranded without any sort of economic opportunity to get them out.
yeah, and here I think this is going to be the main point. Okay, we as a country, we have taken away as a society the position of religion has been degraded to the point where even if many people don't necessarily disbelieve in God, they do not they do not see him as an important. He's essentially a non-factor, at least in their thinking in his life. This hypothetical person, this hypothetical guy, and that's dangerous. Okay, because if you're not concerned with what the hereafter will look like, then suddenly hard times, it's a lot easier to fall into that everything's hopeless mentality because acknowledging that there is a God and knowing that your trials on earth may help you. You can use that as opportunity to expiate sins or offer those sufferings up or anything, and that even if it's a terrible life here, your reward will be great in heaven if you get there. If you take that away from people, as our society does, then that's a very, very, very dangerous thing to mess with. And then you couple that because when you take away the jobs and ship them over to China or whatnot, then people have lost two of these most fundamental things. Everything should be oriented around God, but then the support structures that other things that people might lean on that may not suffice, but at least will give them something if in the absence of that. Well, you just took away the job, and then with society going the way it's going, you're taking away the family. And because you took away the job, they can't have any hobby to look forward to, which, you know, that you shouldn't just live for your hobby, but, you know, it's better than being in abject depression all the time. And you've taken away everything from these people, and you're wondering why they're going out and acting the way they are. I mean, how did you see this coming? You can't just remove God from the equation and expect everything to be all right. I mean,
Yeah, but then also like there's some other factors too that I can't really mention here.
Well, yeah, no, I mean it's I mean all I mean the thing I mean really short term police guarding schools, if the resources are available, would be might be a good thing to deter it. But right now, but I think that even if right now we started to take all of the important steps that we needed to correct this, and we got right onto the right track right now, it's not going to stop immediately, because there's a lot of inertia there. You know, once you set this this is why, you know, undoing something on a societal scale can take decades, and we have to live with the consequences of that. You know, I shouldn't. You know, when you think about it in hindsight, all those school all those drills or whatever that I had to go through. You know, I had to deal with the old school system in elementary school, where, you know, you were just told to sit in the closet and pretend no one was in the classroom, you know, which isn't exactly the best strategy. But and then, you know, in high school we went to a better thing. But you know, I mean, the fact that young kids across the country have to deal with the reality that they might get shot, even that might mess up kids, because, you know, a second grader, his relationship with firearms is probably like playing cowboys and Indians, or that's what it should be, or you know, a varmint rifle if he lives on a farm and there's some red squirrels around. That's what his relationship with firearms should be. Instead, he has to do a drill to counteract a school shooter and get the heck out of a building. Isn't
To be
that going to
fair,
mess up things?
for a pretty long time, being a kid didn't necessarily mean you were completely safe from all the dangers of the world, because the
I
dangers of
know.
the world were things that being a kid really couldn't.
I know, but
I mean, we're talking like in the American context. I mean, yes, we do acknowledge that in other places it wasn't so nice to be a child, especially like a certain continent in the 1940s. But
oh yeah,
What
yeah,
I
bomber
was trying
Reagan.
to, all I'm trying to suggest is, it was that to an extent, I think that idea is somewhat of a modern artificial construction, but at the same time, I get what you mean.
Well, yeah, no, but I think that, you know, even if it's impossible in a given time, I don't think anyone. I think that ideally parents want to shelter. You know, society should ideally try to shelter children from
But
these
no, I get,
ideas before they're ready.
yeah, I think the issue is, I don't think we're really built with a switch that tells you when,
You're ready. Yeah, I get that, and different
right.
children
So
will
I
need to learn that at
well,
different
so I think
times.
no, I mean more that I think, to an extent, parents will just try to shelter the kids as much as they're able to. But the issue is, as you become more and more able to shelter your kids, which is what's happened in the modern day, you could potentially hit a point where the kids are too sheltered.
Yeah, and I see that too. I mean, I think it's a balance, because obviously we don't want the uh the hmm.
But to an extent, maybe that's partly just a result of the amount of households that are single mother households.
Oh yeah, Yeah, I think that could be it. But no, I mean, I think it's a balance. Because obviously, apparently, we don't want to go with that weird story of like some mother crying that she didn't know what she was going to do if Trump won the 2020 election because she had been pretending that Obama was
Anyway,
still the president
let's
to her little kid. But no, I mean, yeah, no, it's a balance. Okay? Everyone think it's time for
I
final
think we're
thoughts on
good.
this topic? All
Yeah.
right,
yes.
everyone, Prussian, you're muted. Darth.
I mean, like the whole idea of like having to shelter your children. I mean, I say it's a delicate balance, but there's no way to really definitively say whether you should lean one way or the other. Like, yes, the young boy does need to be roughened up when he's younger and guided along a path into manhood that requires struggle and pain in life. It is a fundamental necessity to development. You can't just coddle a man, because then you typically get the men of today, which are fundamentally emasculine. But then also you can't brutalize them, and you can't make them think the world is cruel either. It's very much you must have the wisdom and clarity if you are a father guiding your son in his path to manhood. And also, like, you have the other patriarchs, you have like his uncles, you have the grandfather, you have all these other figures too. Like, it's not just the father that is the immediate raiser of the child, it's also everyone around him too. Like, you have to the thing about like also like the 1950s that like I hated was it destroyed the idea of the organic family and replaced it with the nuclear family. The concept where they de-emphasize the necessity of like say the extended family, like your uncles, your second cousins, all these extended relations that really forged a young child in his understanding that he's part of a greater clan instead of just this immediate household. Um, and like I go to my godfather a lot. He's my uncle. That's like the eldest brother of my father. Um, and I go to him for whenever I need wisdom because he he has a lot of experience being a military officer. He had a lot of experience in life in general, being the eldest of his siblings. He is generally, I would say, the most wise theologically as well. So, and then I go to like my uncle, like one of my other uncles, like say if I need like financial advice, because that's his domain, etc. Like you can't just rely solely on the father. You can't just solely rely on the mother. You you have all these extended relations that need to be emphasized once more. And honestly, I do think that families should start like converging once again, having a common land. Like say the uncle lives down the road, your cousins live over there, etc. Like not like all the way across the country like has been developed today.
Of course, doubly so for the extended family figures if a parent of yours is dead, and especially if they die when you're young.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I was raised without a mother, but that was because for a lot of reasons that required my father to take me away from her.
Yeah.
But I didn't have that immediate matriarchal figure, so my grandmother stepped in to fill that void, and all my aunts gave me those matriarchal figures to help mold me into the man I am today with the absence of my mother. And
Yes.
so like that's why like I think especially Germans, like German families still kind of emphasize that from what I've noticed in the United States, just because I think it's like a subconscious thing with the Germans to emphasize the extended family more than the nuclear family, unlike English folk.
A lot of Italians too. You see all those big family dinner nights on The Sopranos and
Oh
the
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I
I
guess.
think it's just like being a continental European versus
Yeah.
the Anglos.
I,
I don't
I
know.
mean,
My family's not like my family. Identity would mostly be Irish on the mom's side, and it's like the big
but
extended family stuff.
they're not
So
Anglos.
yeah.
yeah,
I
but it's
mean,
not really continental.
Well,
I don't know.
I'd say the Irish have more in common with continental Europeans than Anglos.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
you know, I mean,
Absolutely.
no, I mean, I mean, because a couple weeks ago we had this family gathering, and people came from all over, and the sad thing is, I hardly knew any of them. I knew my grandmother because I see her, on almost on a weekly basis. I knew my own parents, obviously, and I knew my uncle. But everyone else, there it's like, oh, who's that? Oh, it's the crazy, or it's the conspiracy theorist guy. Oh yeah, it's him. Let's see. Apparently, according to him, there were tunnels that connected the Führer bunker to the German coast, where there was a submarine ready to take Hitler to Argentina. I don't know
Yeah,
how
that
I don't know
probably
how that was
didn't.
possible, but
Yeah,
okay.
it probably didn't happen. Pay that.
Well, yeah,
We should
that's
probably
just
pay
the
that
point.
no mind.
I know. I was just giving that as an example of some of the stuff he's saying.
Anyway,
But anyways, my point being that it's I really don't know any of these people, and it's like these people, we kind of have a similar history at a certain point on the family tree, and it's kind of sad that I don't really know more of them. I guess
do you
anyone have
have any
final
final
thoughts?
thoughts?
Yeah, Koshin, Will, have any final thoughts on?
I mean, that took up like half the conversation in the first place. So
My only thing I gotta say is that you know what? Never mind. I'm fine.
Okay.
Okay, now, question to talk about the Alaska special election and the controversy surrounding ranked choice voting as implemented in that particular state.
I'm sorry. I don't think I can do this right now. I'm getting a terrible headache right now.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. We can save it for next
sorry.
week.
I gotta go. Now. I'm really sorry.
Well,
My head's
have any of you been
out.
tracking the Rings of Power?
I have been tracking it.
What is that?
That
Sorry, are we
is a
skipping?
show on
It is an
Amazon Prime about
abomination.
the Lord of the Rings.
Are we
Oh.
skipping the Alaska thing?
I think we should, since do any of us really have any knowledge about this?
It's cold up
I
there.
do have some knowledge.
I mean, I've been to Alaska, and I know Sarah Palin is insane, but
I do have some knowledge about this. So
Well,
the
look, I was just checking.
Democrat candidate won the special election for the now open House seat in Alaska.
honestly, that's pretty good, because Sarah Palin is just insane. Like, seriously, she is just mentally not there. And I don't think she's also part of the old neocon crew, which the neocons need to be exterminated from politics.
It's a good thing you include that caveat, because
by exterminated, I don't mean in funny camps, but I mean just isolated and kept away from politics.
Yes, Susan, please don't.
Yeah, Susan.
Oh well, not the Susan. Anyways,
we mean it in a nice, kid-friendly way of elimination, not
but also
not
this
an
video
adult
is not
manner.
made for kids, Susan. This video is not made for kids. We're complying with
Yeah,
COVID here.
it's not made for kids, but in that one thing, it's like a kid-friendly elimination of your enemies.
We just say swipe or no swiping enough times and they go away.
So apparently there were a lot of people who don't know how ranked choice voting works. So there were voters that apparently accidentally voted for the Democrat candidate because they didn't know how ranked choice voting worked. Or
How? Because you're supposed to just list 1, 2, 3 or whatever, right?
Exactly.
Well, it's confusing.
Well, I mean, look, okay, is it as crooked as a Florida ballot? No. Well, then we shouldn't complain.
I still don't like the idea of ranked choice ballots. I like proportional.
Like 100% against proportional, to be honest.
Well, I like the having more than one party have a possibility
I think
of
there's
being in parliament.
significantly better ways to achieve that.
I like local representation, so proportional
Well, I
voting
mean,
ain't exactly me.
I'm technically for like mixed, like the German system. If we're gonna have a awful democratic element in government,
I'm against anything that uses any level of proportional.
well, half the Bundestag is proportional, the other half is local representation.
Yes, I'm aware.
What does the suffix "stag" mean?
That just means like house.
Okay.
The federal house, and then previously was the Reichstag or the realm's house. Reich can mean multiple things. It can mean empire. It can mean realm.
State.
No, Reich means realm or empire.
I thought Bundes meant
That means federal. Bundes means federal.
Oh, it means federal.
Yeah, that's why like the Bundeswehr or the federal force is the name of their armed forces.
Are you sure?
You have to admit that does kind of sound cool. The federal force. You have to admit that name kind of does have a ring to it.
Well then,
Not a very good
like
one.
they call like that the combined. Like funny thing about like Germans, like because they recognize that the army is the most important branch. When people say like Bundeswehr, they really just mean the army exclusively, even though the army is really called the Heer, which is. And then like under like the Wehrmacht, like technically Wehrmacht was like the name for like all the German armed forces in the mid-century German regime, but people really mean like the army because they didn't really care about the Kriegsmarine or the Luftwaffe and didn't see them as part of the Wehrmacht, even though they were.
Didn't really care about the Kriegsmarine. Their biggest accomplishment was making a boat that sank on its first mission.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
in
the
fairness, you had
Krieg-
the entirety of the British battle fleet stacked against it. It really wasn't a fair fight.
Yeah, it wasn't, but also like the thing about like the Kriegsmarine though, they produced the most advanced warships at the time. Like when Americans dissected the Prince Eugen, the American analysts said that ship should have been made like in the 1950s, not the 1940s.
Well, the Germans are very great at over-engineering things, and if we look at the Tiger II, that was as much to their detriment as
The thing about like a warship versus a tank though is like a warship can be over-engineered. Like it's specifically meant for strategic operations. Like that's what a navy is. Like you don't need like an industrial level production if you can have set piece battle after set piece battle. And your ships, even though you have less of them, you still outperform your enemy. You can succeed navally.
Well,
In fact, that's how the British like destroyed like the Spanish Armada and the French fleet. Like they had a much smaller navy than both the French and Spanish combined. And
I mean, we got rid
but
of
they had a superior navy.
battleship, so I don't think that's entirely true.
no, he's talking about the Spanish Armada of like 13 or 15
Right.
something. But
So,
no, my point.
But I'm saying like you can over-engineer a warship, but then if you over-engineer a tank, like that's a whole nother beast. You should really think about it in terms of industrial production and total output, as well as also being a useful battlefield tool that is reliable. Like the Panzer IV was like the pinnacle, and like I would kind of say if they would have tweaked some things on the Panzer V, that could have been a good Panzer.
Let's not get into the armchair military historian stuff.
Well, no, I mean,
okay,
all I'll say to that,
I am actually in the military, so
yeah, he's actually. Well, no, all I'll say to that is the biggest problem that Germany faced was people say, "Oh, they should have just built more Panzer IVs because Tiger didn't exactly perform as well as hoped, and it was very expensive." Well, the problem was that Tiger was meant to be a breakthrough tank, and then when they were using it as a breakthrough tank, it did well, but then the situation developed not necessarily to Germany's advantage, so they had to use it in non-breakthrough tank roles.
In a defensive role.
Yeah, in the defensive role, which it wasn't meant for. But also, too, Germany didn't exactly have. Sure, for the cost of one Tiger, you could have built like 3 Panzer IVs, but where was the manpower to crew them?
Well, yeah,
and the fuel to drive them anywhere?
I mean, like that is like the problem with any army is like logistics, and I will say that I mean this is kind of like the problem of being a Central European power instead of being like France, where you're a Western European power, or like Russia, where you're Eastern European, where kind of like you can keep your foes at a distance. Germany is always surrounded, and they don't really have easy access for trade and getting in other resources from other ports. So, yeah, it's just hard fighting wars long term as Germany, geographically speaking.
So, does anyone have any final thoughts on sort of what we were supposed to be talking about, which we sort of went off on a really good tangent about the history of German warfare a little bit. So are we good to? Are we good?
Final statement. Even though I was talking about the mid-century Germans a lot, I will say Second Reich is best Reich.
I'm more of a hate to redeem myself, but anyways, I guess thoughts on Alaska. I mean, democracy kind of not good, not surprised. I mean, actually,
Democracy is the most
no. I
evil
do have
form
a
of
more
government
intensive.
known
I
to
do have a
man.
more intensive thought. Okay, I do have a more competent thought worthy of two brain cells paying attention. Okay, if a proportion of your electorate, okay, if there was enough people in the electorate to be confused by this whole thing, maybe not everyone should vote. I mean, okay, not okay. Obviously, the well, they were called literacy tests, were they? The things that
Yes.
the literacy tests. Okay, obviously, we think hold literacy tests into bad context because the stereotype would be that they were used exclusively for the purpose of depriving blacks of the vote. But at the same time, if you're using them equitably, maybe make sure that the only people who are voting actually know what the heck a ballot is and how to use the ballot. I mean, maybe I mean, I don't. The universal suffrage. Okay, it was King Charles the First who said, "Democracy is giving equal weight to unequal minds," or something to that effect.
It's equal votes for unequal minds.
Oh, equal votes for unequal minds, and
that's what King Charles the First said about it.
Yeah, that's what he said about it, and it's true. I mean, okay, and I'm not saying that people who are mentally deficient aren't valuable human beings and their lives have worth. I'm just saying that maybe they shouldn't be voting. Okay, if you're going to have an electorate like we have in the United States, that electorate actually has to be informed and have a decent understanding of civics. Because if it doesn't, then that's going to lead to bad consequences. And I know that makes me sound like an authoritarian. And of course, the question is, well, who's going to come up with the test? Because somebody can come up with a test to try to rig it so that one group of people isn't allowed to vote or whatever. But at the same time, I'd rather have to run that gauntlet than anything else than have to deal with like 2 IQ people.
I'm gonna have to fully disagree with you on that.
What, you think that everyone, if we're gonna have a voting, everyone should just be allowed to vote?
Well, every citizen, or every adult citizen will have. But also more specifically, I think that the modern political climate has lots of great evidence as to why the issue of who gets to make the choice of how we determine who gets to vote is the much bigger issue than just the problems that occur with.
I mean, I guess that's fair. I guess that's fair because if you have Democrats deciding the test, the questions will all be in the worst way possible. Like, who was responsible for the totally bad racism that happened? A, not us. B, the Republicans. Or C, the evil white guys. But anyways,
that kind of thing is only going to work so long as everybody agrees to not be a massive political scumbag. And I mean, if we thought that was a reasonable likelihood to persist, why would we be here?
Yeah. I don't know. Better just to dispense with democracy, which is kind of what you just said.
Funny thing, like in my, I'm taking a political science class right now, and like the essay for this week I had to write was on, do you support direct or representative democracy? And I essentially just said I support direct democracy because I'm an accelerationist and I want to see the destruction of democracy as quick as possible.
I kind of had to disagree with you there because you don't support bad things just to get them over.
The thing is, like, if you can't overpower an enemy, you lead it towards its own destruction.
I mean, yeah, but is doing that really the lesser of two evils, though? I mean, is trying
to... Honestly, like, you gotta think about it like warfare in that point. Like, you are at war with an institution that you fundamentally, let's just say, ideologically and metaphysically despise. And when you think about it in terms of warfare, the aspects you have to take is, well, how do I make my enemy cannibalize itself because it is so powerful? Well, you support direct democracy because it is it is the most cannibalistic form of government in all of human history. Like Plato wrote about it in his Republic, Aristotle wrote about it in his Politics, because they observed it firsthand in Athens themselves.
People thinking about it that way is kind of the one of the main problems we're having. So, again, disagree.
Yeah, you may disagree, but I fundamentally view myself at war with democracy. So
I want to see the abolition of the democratic system, but my problem with the whole warfare analogy is right now. If we go down this accelerationist path, that's going to have a lot of consequences that might lead to the deaths of a lot of civilians. I know, I guess, double effect. That's an unintended consequence, but I think that we really, if we're going to go down that path, we should take before we go down that path, we should decide. We should really think about, is the benefit of subverting democracy in a shorter period of time, is that going to be a better?
I don't actually
way of
agree
going
that
about it?
Entirely an intended effect. The entire point is make things bad so that people will change things. When I mean, that's the entire point of the idea. So I don't actually agree, because you're essentially saying the system, this concept, in this concept of make things bad so people will change things, making things turning out bad is an unintended consequence. That's obvious.
That's not my point at all. Like the point of accelerationism is not like, oh, make it so bad that people change it. No, it's to accelerate the destruction of the institution themselves. It's not about convincing people, oh, things need to change, because honestly the lumpen proletariat will just continue to meander on no matter what. 90% of people don't have critical thinking skills.
I don't necessarily. Okay, I was speaking in a very broad sense. I'm saying so that people change things. That doesn't necessarily mean the people, but change. Changing the human race.
All right. Let's. All right. Are we ready? Or have we gotten all of our thoughts about Alaska out?
Well, actually, hold on. Here's something that I've noticed is interesting. We're just holding this, conversation with dispensing with democracy as bog standard and everything is going. But a few months ago, when I said I was against women's suffrage, everyone freaked the heck out. Either that means that that we've made progress here, or suffragette propaganda is still prominent or something. I don't know.
It still is in the minds. That's why you have to work very carefully. You have to plan how you say things, especially when it comes to like denying women's suffrage. Like I do it very covertly in the military, but I hide it behind a lot of intellectual jargon, so that way people can't really just say, "Oh, you're just a bigot." It's like, no, I'm an intellectual stating observations about the truth of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I will say one thing for the women's suffragette movement. In England, they had suffragette jujitsu, and I guess that's kind of a funny concept. I'm gonna smack you in the neck. Give me that ballot. Come on, give me the ballot. I can do
Okay.
jujitsu.
All
Or
right.
the guy who took down
All
Shia
right.
LaBeouf.
All right. So I believe our next topic was President Biden's speech from last night.
I thought we were going to talk about the Rings of Power.
I wanted to bring up the Rings of Power just to tell the audience.
Okay, go ahead. Briefly.
You shall not pass at the Amazon Prime website. Do not watch that show. Do not give Amazon your attention. Don't give it your money to fund that show because it is fundamentally trampling upon Tolkien's vision for his own world. And they took the
Please do not
they
reward people doing things.
well, yes, don't reward evil. And
Yeah.
Amazon is fundamentally creating something evil in the Rings of Power. If you're going to do anything, like I kind of hate this, but I use Audible, and it's technically part of Amazon, but like actually like read the real books by Tolkien, whether through audiobook or through like actually
Paper.
physically reading, because that is essentially a resistance to the cultural decay of our times in the Kali Yuga. And it's something that everybody needs to realize, especially if you're part of a dissident ideology and if you go against the grain.
You know, I recently reread The Hobbit, and it's a lot simple. It's a lot shorter of a read than Lord of the Rings. But I don't think he was Tolkien was specifically I don't know. It is sort of it's interesting to see how there was I'm not okay, spoilers if you haven't read it, and I would highly recommend you read it because it is a very good book. But the when the people get to, if you have read the book, because if you haven't read the book you're supposed to be skipping ahead 40 seconds or whatever. But when the dwarves and company get to Riverdale, or the town next to Riverdale, or whatever the town was, and everyone starts to sing the old songs, because the king is back and the good times are here again. There is that mentality with us now, now that these old ideologies that, produced a better past and will hopefully lead us to a better future are still coming around. And the old songs, that our forefathers sang, either literal
Right.
forgotten.
Oh, all right. All right. That was very illuminating. Thank you very much for the warning about the Rings of Power.
Oh, and I will be on a stream on the Politicrats channel tonight, on the Rings of Power, but specifically talking about Tolkien in resistance to Amazon. So, like, I know when this video is released, like, it would have already been a couple days ago, but I would recommend watching something like that where we're going to be talking about the actual books and not about not watch Amazon's whatever you want to call it, destruction, catastrophe, um, degradation, or actually corruption, because Tolkien talks a lot about corruption, how evil has only the ability to corrupt what is good and cannot create anything original in itself. That is fundamentally what evil does. Like, say, when people complain about their franchises and stuff being destroyed by corporatism and all that, like, really they should be saying, well, it's being corrupted by evil forces. That's what you should really think of it as. And think about like these big corporates as actually like evil entities in themselves.
You will submit to the mouse, and we will force the stuff on your kids, and you'll have no control.
Yeah, the mouse is a great example.
Go that far. They're just tools themselves.
Too bad Prussian isn't here. He does the Mickey voice really well.
Oh, yeah, I had a friend in acting class who did a very good Mickey Mouse. Man, high school. I'm gonna miss it. I won't miss a lot of it, but I'm gonna miss it. All right, anyone have any?
No, not really.
Oh, Will?
I think you
Are
said
you
the
a
next
Tolkien
thing.
aficionado? Your silence is very assuring.
saying is, I'm not watching it. I'm not even going to talk about it. As far as I know, it's dead to me and it doesn't exist. I'll go back and watch the original Lord of the Rings movies on extended edition and act like that the Amazon series doesn't even exist.
All right, Koshin.
I don't know what to say.
All right, since my little what do we call it? Agenda item thing was thrown out the window like our boys in Prague. What's next?
I think of Biden.
Biden.
Biden's speech. I mean, why not? Okay. All I know is I saw a clip of it this morning on the local news station, and he was going on, and our institutions, man, we believe in the rule of law, and it's you this is the frustrating part.
If the law is evil, then you do not support the rule of law because
Well, no,
the laws can be evil. Just saying for the public.
I know, but it's the real the thing. It's so frustrating that this is how gullible so many people are, because not 2 years ago in the summer of 2020 you had all these same Democrat politicians who are now shocked that that people were angry at the FBI and saying, oh, this, that, and the other, when you had these politicians bailing out people who were arrested for rioting, like Kamala Harris, the vice president, did this. And I know that's kind of guilt by association because I don't know if Biden specifically did that. But you have all of these people saying they don't support the rule of law. Now, yeah, Biden supports the rule of law, but it's his rule of law, or more specifically, more, I guess, accurately, the current Democrat establishment idea of the rule of law, where the FBI are the great heroes and the local cops are all the evil bad guys because we can step over the local cops and subject them all to and force them all to be one part of one monotonous state police. But I mean, it's just so crazy that they, in the space of 2 years, they've just flipped from being like blink the police, and now they're like, oh, our lovely FBI, oh, our lovely Capitol Police, oh, everything, oh, we totally support law enforcement and we don't support violence and whatnot, even though we said we need to get more confrontational or whatever. It's insane that people will believe this. I mean, it's insane. Can you believe that this is happening? I don't.
Violence is only okay when it's their supporters who do it.
I mean, I'm not saying that the Republicans are particularly whatever. I mean, I'll say this for the Republicans: they are consistent in the back the blue, or whatever. But I mean, it's just. It's just, here's the thing with law enforcement. Law enforcement is only good insofar as the laws it is enforcing are good, and they are enforcing them, and that any police officer is enforcing them in a good, to the best of his ability. Um, and I'm not saying that your local neighborhood Bobby is a bad copper because there's one stupid city ordinance that doesn't make sense. But I mean, and this is kind of partly why I think that, generally speaking, the more local a police organization is, the better it's going to be, because there's less chance of your city government um, supporting the big dumb when it comes to these laws, or at least the local police are going to have to deal with that.
He made a lot of comparisons. I actually watched the speech last night, and it was kind of humorous to watch in real time CNN edit the background to make it look pink from that
They didn't-
sort of background you've seen in the meme
Yeah,
content.
They like changed the color settings on their cameras or something.
Yeah.
Why did they do that?
Because the lighting he had made him look like a fascist dictator. And somehow nobody noticed that until he was already live on air.
Yeah, optics.
It was like a room with this really ominous red lighting coming up out of the ground or something like that. It, like, aesthetically, it was exactly how, like, any show or movie would portray the bad guy giving a speech.
You see
Look,
that's what you call
Nobody noticed that.
that's what you call Freudian slip. So a Freudian slip is when revealed preferences, like when something is showed for what it really is within somebody's mind. Like say when somebody stumbles with their word when they're trying to lie and they actually like say the truth accidentally.
I really wouldn't go that far. I think that I don't think the lighting and the coloring thing would be that significant outside of just making fun of them if it weren't for the facts, rather, that CNN made edits live on air to try and make things look better. Because that's extremely telling of who they cite. As if it wasn't obvious, but still.
Well, I just say it's like a Freudian slip because like aesthetics are a major key to any propaganda, which by the way, propaganda I'm using in its original definition of just political education. When you're trying to politically educate a population, aesthetics is as important as the words themselves. And if you can nail down the aesthetics to sway the masses, they will embrace your words far easier than, well, let's just say bland and boring aesthetics, like say a conference hall where people will just become fundamentally disinterested. I mean, that's why I think like they went with that lighting initially because they thought it would be enticing to a general audience and more entertaining and more capturing to actually draw people in.
Like they thought it made him look like serious and stern or something.
Well, yes, make him look like a man of action. Like, say, people will be drawn to men of action far more than people that are send democratic platitudes. Like, that's why a funny mustache man became so popular is because he fundamentally understood how the masses thinks. He understood the power of aesthetics, the power of art, the power of rhetoric, and he combined all these elements, and that's why he became so popular. I mean, also Joseph Goebbels helped in that in some cases, but it was still heavily lifted from Mustache Man.
Actually,
Like,
oh, sorry, I'll let you finish.
Oh, I just like to say that like I hate to constantly like, go back to that man as like a reference, but he did understand how to be a man of action and how to use propaganda to its fullest extent, unlike many people today where they're just making slips and they're not using it properly, and it's very telling.
Yeah, if only he was, if only used that ability for good. But actually, there was to case in point of how convincing it was. There was actually a Jew. I heard this. I heard the secondhand, and he was talking about he lived in Nazi Germany at the time, and he was this. I think this was before the Nazis took over, and he saw this rally, so he's like, okay, might as well walk in, and it was Hitler or somebody giving one of these anti-Jewish speeches, and he said it was so well done. It's like even I was getting into it, and they were talking about getting rid of me. I mean, that's got to be kind of impressive if you're getting drawn in by propaganda, calling you Untermensch. But
hmm I mean, like honestly, like when there's like this movie about the book 1984, and they nail down the aesthetics perfectly of what actually like draws in the masses and like what can sway a crowd to fervor. In the opening scene where what was his name? Wilson? Was that the main character's
Yes.
name?
yes,
Yes. So Wilson is
I
at
think I'm familiar with that movie too. It was incredibly well done.
Yes. But in the opening scene, there was this thing in 1984 called the 2 minutes of outrage, where you purposely put before a camera like somebody that was against the regime, propagandize it to make them look like, well, quite frankly, they would use torture techniques that like the Soviets would do, where you would torture the man into loving Big Brother again, and then having to go before the camera and denounce themselves, like say that they were part of foreign intelligence, or they were manipulated, or they went against the proletariat, and then all the masses would get angry at them, and they'd be given 2 minutes of outrage, and you just see Wilson and like all the people that have more critical thinking skills can see through it, and they fundamentally know that this is just a tool to sway the masses. But if they fundamentally tell the people around them, they'll think that they are now a traitor, and that's why they are in the outer party and they're not allowed into the inner party, because they can see for what it is.
Yeah.
And that's how good propaganda techniques worked. Like George Orwell like understood that, because he was a socialist himself, and when he went to fight in Republican Spain for the Republicans, he joined a communist militia down there. And he saw these propaganda techniques happen firsthand in like Catalonia and other parts of Spain.
Yeah, it's
That is, that is actually very interesting. George Orwell is a very interesting man with a bunch of interesting history. I don't think 1984 was meant to be the instruction manual it turned out to be.
no, but I mean, hey, actually,
I mean, it's not supposed to be like an instruction manual. It's just telling you what reality
Just
is.
a joke.
it was just a prank, bro. No,
No, I mean, whatever.
no. No, I mean, I actually, I probably do need to read 1984 myself, but there's a lot of books I really need to read. But
You could be like me and like keep on getting more books in the mail from, and it's like, okay, well that's like book 102 that I still need to read. That's book 103,
yeah, I'm still trying to
104.
get through. I'm still trying to get through Utopia of Users and Other Essays by Chesterton.
Yeah,
But
I literally have like everything from army doctrine manuals to books by the saints, philosophy books, political.
We're going to have a lot of reading come retirement.
no,
Oh yeah, and I
the
literally have like a small library, and I'm only 21.
Oh yeah, have you gotten your own stamp like my grandpa had, with your name and initials to stamp it to the front cover? Well, not the front cover, the front page. You need to,
Oh.
if not, you need to get on that. So I mean, it's here's what I'll do if I get my pace of reading up to snuff. I will select a book for a couple weeks or whatever, and then maybe we'll make it a show of Monarchist reading club or whatever, where I can discuss the book that I read and forced you
we
to
could
read.
we could actually do like the Lord of the Rings, since it's like it should be in all of our catalogs.
Oh yes, it is. So
like
we might need more than 2 weeks for that.
I'm almost done with the Fellowship, but I'm audiobooking it this time because I just don't have time. Which actually, like there was a recent audiobook edition that was voiced by the character Smeagol. He did the audiobooks for all three, and they're actually very well done, except for when some parts where he sings the parts in the book, like it gets pretty cringe in the audiobook. It's like he's singing, this is dumb, it sounds awful. Like
yeah,
the
you
character,
definitely need to bring a musical accompaniment if you do like when the
like
elves. Oh, sorry.
the actor for Smeagol just like doesn't know tones at all. He just has like he kind of like sings it like in his own weird tone that like doesn't jive that well, so it's just kind of awkward.
My brother. that is me. It's like I sing the elvish songs or whatever when I'm at when I was reading The Hobbit, and I can't do tone. The best I can do is just imitate the versions of songs that I like the best. Like my favorite version, Nova Scotia Farewell, is the one by Ian and Sylvia, and that's the version that I kind of do. But anyways, so farewell, farewell to Nova Scotia's charms. Yeah, you see, I'm not a very good singer. Yeah. But anyways, yeah. What were we talking about?
We were talking about Biden's speech, and we ended up going off on a tangent about propaganda.
Okay. New show, Monarchist reading something. It has to be an alliterative title. New rule. All titles must be alliterative on and the Monarchist of America YouTube catalog. But so. But right now it's really only one show because every other thing we've tried just died. But but yeah, so new show coming when? I don't know. Maybe next year, maybe this year. Who cares? Yeah, I don't know. I think I kind of dig the aesthetic of the of the ominous background and him waving his hands in the air. I mean, give him. But give him a dictator hat though. Like, just give him the hat. Like,
Well, he needs a proper uniform like that. Like a
Yeah.
suit and tie. A suit and tie is like, I would say, like the worst apparel for anybody to wear, except for bourgeoisie. I
Yeah.
mean, democracies are it is the government of the bourgeois.
There's
So
been a bunch of like photo edits and stuff of him as a result of it. So
Actually, here's an observation I know. So you have all these communist dictators, and they still look, ominous and impressive or whatnot. But their outfits are simple. Like Stalin just had like the gray whatever, and Mao had his simple thing with just the pockets or whatever. They to give the impression that he was one of the people, even though Stalin never worked a day in his life except in robbing, and
Castro has
executing.
an aesthetic behind it.
But anyways, but no, I mean, so, but then you have, Hitler and Mussolini, and their outfits were very intricate and complex. Well, Mussolini wasn't complex, but
that's because like I'll kind of
Germany
cover
has two
I'll kind of
blocks, so
cover
it's
for
not-
Adolf because Germany has a history of chancellors actually having like their own uniform. So like look at like Bismarck and like other government ministers, even like during the time of the Empire, and they would wear intricate uniforms dating back to their time in the military because most of them were Junkers, and by that Junkers were they were below even knights in terms of aristocracy. Like they were kind of like the level of a squire, but they made up the majority of the Prussian nobility, and most of them also made up the majority of the Prussian officer corps. So when they were put into government ministries, they just kind of kept wearing their uniform because it's more aesthetically pleasing than a suit and tie or bow tie.
I hate to bring it back to Kaiserreich because it kind of does make us seem like LARPers, but I do like to imagine the MacArthur regime, and even after everything's all said and done, he still just walks into the White House wearing his military uniform. It's like, okay, gentlemen, and he goes to Congress and he says, "Look at all these undisciplined rabble rousers, not even in their dress uniforms."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, imagine that! Like he just forces Congress to everyone wearing like just the dress uniform of the U.S. Army.
Well, no. Congress has like their own specific uniform.
Congress, like in real life, Congress has a uniform.
No, they should.
Oh, they should.
Like government ministers, like Bismarck, technically wasn't even wearing like an official military uniform. He was wearing what was called the Reichskanzler's uniform, which was kind of like a Prussian general, but it didn't like have a lot of the things that distinguish himself as a general. But it gave off like the.
I think the issue is more just that, like, the clothes rich people wear nowadays are kind of boring.
Well,
like think about it. Back in the day, they would wear like silk sashes and all kinds of crazy stuff, and now it's just suit, tie.
Well, that's
nice
because
shirts, slacks.
That's because the bourgeois control the modern institutions of power. So they conform it to their sensitivities, and the bourgeois are fundamentally the suit and tie principled.
No, that's like a total. That's just a thing that evolved over time. I mean, in like the 1700s, you had like the whole colonial look with powdered wigs and all that. I mean, that was still.
But that was fundamentally aristocratic, not bourgeois. Like if you actually like dig down and look at it, I'm just saying like the bourgeois like developed the suit and tie in England. I think it was around the early 1800s, and it was actually seen as like a lesser man's suit, a lesser man's dress. a proper aristocrat and a man of higher office would wear a proper uniform befitting of a man of his rank.
I mean, it's not like a new type of clothing is going to come out and it's automatically this is what rich people, the people of society wear.
I'm not saying the rich people. I'm just saying the bourgeois. Bourgeois doesn't mean rich.
I know. But what I meant was like, obviously, it's not going to be. When it came out, it wasn't going to be something that the people of the top of society wore, because that's not how anything had some of the caption.
You're really cutting out.
Sorry. Whatever. Let's just move on.
Okay. Anyone have any final thoughts on Supreme Leader outfits? Who's your favorite Supreme Leader's outfit?
The Prussian uniform.
No, Pinochet pulled off a cape, and that's like absurdly hard to do.
I mean, capes
I think that there should be a special outfit, but that'll be up to a bunch of people later. That is my only thought on this.
Okay, Will, who's your favorite Supreme Leader's outfit?
Oh,
what's your favorite Supreme Leader's outfit?
That's a tough choice.
Or just high-ranking government official in big baddie organization.
You ever seen a Luftwaffe officer's uniform?
I'm sure I have.
They are so nice.
I do like it.
Although I would say the German Imperial Army uniform was probably my favorite.
Oh, they were snazzy. The Luftwaffe's uniform.
Get this Prussia boo out of here.
No, I'm actually.
Prussia had the aesthetic.
Yeah, Prussia had great aesthetics.
I'm making a joke.
And it really hit the Bavaria boo.
Yes, I am a Bavaria boo, but also Bavaria. They did have, at least at the same time, very similar uniforms to Prussia. At least before unification, and Bavarian uniforms were also very, very nice, I would say. In fact, the German Empire didn't really adapt a universal uniform until the turn of the century at the beginning of the 1900s. They still had a lot of their regional uniforms up until that point, even after unification.
Didn't regiments within the German army still try to maintain their own different each regiment's uniform was still unique and distinctive until the Nazis came in with their unified, albeit cool, new uniform?
The Reichswehr kind of did unify the uniform a bit during their time. So it was already happening even before Funny Mustache Man came in. It's kind of sad, but that's what happened. In World War I, though, the Bavarians specifically have the checkered flag, but they would have a little trim around the edge of their high collars to distinguish themselves as Bavarian soldiers from the rest of the Imperial German Army.
That's very interesting. Did any of the other German states have the same sort of thing, or was it just Bavaria?
Bavaria was given a unique position where, in times of peace, they maintained their own army, even though technically they sent all their funding to the Imperial Chancellery, and then the Imperial Chancellery funded the Bavarian army, but the Bavarian army was under the Bavarian king under times of peace.
Aren't there a German version of Texas?
Yeah, except for far better culturally than Texas, so.
And much more blue in aesthetics. Which
yes.
I do actually have the Bavarian, a Bavarian flag sitting on top of my bookshelf of storing things that may or may not be books.
I fundamentally love all the different German states and all their unique cultures, but of course I'm predisposed to Bavaria because of my own familial ties, but I also love Prussia, I love Austria, I love Saxony, I love Württemberg, I love Baden. The only ones I really hate is the Hanseatic cities. I don't like their aesthetics because I don't like merchant cities.
But they got all that money.
I don't care if they have money.
Okay. Anyways, so does anyone have any final thoughts? We still need everyone's favorite Supreme Leader uniform.
Wait. I need to know his opinion on what was it called? Bismarck or whatever, that the peasant republic.
Peasant Republic.
It wasn't the merchant republic.
I have no opinion because well, I just don't really care about republics within.
Well, I mean, it was part of the. Like,
I know it was part of the HRE, but
whatever.
Yeah, I really have no opinion on that.
I don't know. I just thought the question would get something funnier than.
But they
whatever.
they
I didn't mean to derail.
They technically did submit themselves to the will of the Holy Roman Emperor, so technically they were kind of a republic. But it was kind of like how Venice was kind of a republic, but they really still did submit to the emperor, so they were technically a monarchy. So, in the long term,
I did.
My favorite Supreme Leader outfit is, well, I suppose I will have to, by default, go with King Louis the 14th because
But he wasn't Supreme Leader. He was king. There's a difference.
Yeah,
we're
there's
talking about,
a
like,
difference.
Big Bad. We're talking about Big Bad here. We're talking about,
Oh,
like,
we're talking
bad.
big. Okay, if we're talking Big Bad, then there's a certain aesthetic to Stalin's outfit that I like.
okay. I mean, he kind of just fell in the tradition. Like, it's funny because like the Soviets did like still kind of follow the tradition of the Russian Empire in terms of uniform. So you're just kind of saying, oh, the communist version of the Tsarist uniform. You like that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
Well,
I
didn't know what to. I didn't know who else to say here that had a cool uniform.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, Goring, he was very flamboyant in his uniform. I like how his uniform was like it was a lot bluer. So I guess given that it kind of stood out, which kind of made it less uniform, it stood out from everyone else's. I guess that's kind of cool. But Goring was always doing his own thing. He was very eccentric in his stuff. I mean, the guy kept pet tigers or something, or pet baby lions or something.
Well, I mean, that's when you're given a Reichsmarshal, which is like it's higher than a field marshal, which is actually they took that position from the Holy Roman Empire, where in the Holy Roman Empire days, the emperor would appoint a Reichsmarshal to head all the different armies within the Holy Roman Empire. So he was kind of trying to harken back to the idea of the Reichsmarschall being the supreme leader of all the military forces within Germany. That's why he was kind of given a lot of carte blanche to act, and he was given supreme commander of the Luftwaffe as well. So he had total control there, and their aesthetics and how they function. Which, by the way, he was a fighter ace in the First World War. Like, he was not incompetent in what he did. So, and he built a very good tactical air force. Just the only thing that the Luftwaffe was not good at was the strategic warfare aspect, like destroying of industrial targets, etc., against your enemy. But they were really good in supporting the army because that's what Goering knew from the First World War.
Yeah, obviously, Goering. Personally, he may not have been, the best guy because he still was a proponent of National Socialism until his suicide. But I mean, he was the only Nazi leader who could laugh at himself, at least in public, and so he kind of found a special admiration with the German people, which it's just one of those weird things where when you humanize like these different like dictators and find out that and like men of like power like on the big bads, and they found out they had like personal lives. It's kind of weird. I don't know.
I mean, like the thing like I'll give Goering is like he was like this weird like bridge between the aristocratic class in Germany and the common people, because he was raised in a knightly family in Germany. So that's kind of why like Goering was also kind of like this flamboyant character, compared to a lot of the other members of the NSDAP. Because quite frankly, the aristocracy in Germany had very big personalities, and it's kind of funny. But I do love like the German aristocratic spirit because they were very much men of action types, and they always wanted to be like the great heroes, the great knights of history, etc.
Ooh, and one final note on Goering. He also had a massive model railway layout. So if he lived today, I would like to have seen that because he would have had the finances to make a pretty sick, realistic layout.
He was a giant nerd, is what I'm hearing. That's kind of.
But yeah, but when you're that rich, nerd, you call him eccentric. You're at that scale, you're an eccentric millionaire. You're not a nerd. There's a difference.
You're
Just the amount of money in your checking account.
I reserve the right to bully a dead historical figure that I choose.
Hey, nerds of the world unite, but not Goering though.
I mean, you could actually like hold a conversation with Goering. Like, I will respect an intellectual, and Goering still was very intellectually capable. So I will give him the benefit of the doubt. I give like, honestly, if I could have a conversation with anybody, even if I completely disagree with them politically, let's just say I'm not so carte blanche in casting judgment upon them automatically.
Oh, it was O-Gauge.
I mean, I think there's a certain point though where it's like, yeah, but he was looking for funny mustache man. So.
Well, yeah, but he's not saying that he's not saying he's excusing that, but he's still saying that in the intellectual sense. Ooh, a color picture of Goering's model. Yeah, you see, I mean, they're cool and all, especially because this is back in the days when like model locomotives were still made out of like just metal, and nowadays they're mostly depending on quality or whatnot. But it's like there's no real there's not that much scenic detail. It's just the track and the bridges and stuff. It's. I mean, obviously, I wouldn't want to bring the timeline forward to present technology because that would probably mean more people would die in the war with all the extra technology of death. But I mean, hey, you could build a pretty sick layout.
Here's the thing: is if you bring it forward to modern technology, he'd never have had the chance to do any of it because he would have spent all his time playing Train Simulator.
Oh, hey, there's still.
I wonder who out of the National Socialist elites would have been playing Farm Simulator all day.
I don't know who's in charge of their agriculture. Probably that guy.
I'm pretty sure Spear would play City Skylines though.
Yeah, he definitely would have. I mean, it's probably like a good thing that they didn't have video games back then. Like, kept people a lot more focused on reality.
I feel like we're slowly heading in the direction of just giving Japanese people ideas for new animes.
All the NSDAP people said.
Hey, I mean, if the Japanese want to be a wereabouts, I just say let them.
No. Imagine a TV show where it's just the all like the Nazi leaders. They're sitting around playing on the Xbox, and they're just the casually racist kids dropping the N bomb.
No, you mean gamer Hitler? Have you ever seen like that? Have you ever seen that picture where it's like he's holding a controller? It's really funny.
Oh, let me look it up.
I'll look it up. I'm currently playing Hoi 4's Poland right now. Speaking of video games. Hey, and I restored the Kingdom of Poland as well.
You'll have to send that to me because I'm at work, so I can't look it up right now.
Oh dang! That is a Hitler in like a gray lined suit with the Xbox controller, and he's like kind of like sitting in his chair.
Yeah,
wow.
He is. That's one of them. Oh yeah. Yeah. Here's the edited photo. Oh, here. I need to copy. I did not save. It's gonna be in podcaster chat.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know this.
We should get back on.
Yeah, I saw that one. No. So. Okay. So I don't know. Okay, Leon. Now that Leon's just just hopped in.
Hey guys,
Do you have any idea what we're talking about?
something about Goebbels and a video game Hitler.
Yes. Of course.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
the
so
gist.
originally this conversation was talking about Biden. Then it got to propaganda. Then it got to discussion on which of the big baddies we like from an aesthetic standpoint. And oh boy, there's gonna be no shortage of people calling us LARPers in the comments for all this.
Hey,
If we're talking about baddies, I might need, depending on viewpoints, I might need to change my answer from Pinochet.
Oh, well, but he had a
Okay.
cool theme song going with him. So, Mi General Augusto Pinochet. Anyways,
I mean, Francisco Franco did also have like good aesthetics as well. I mean, Franco.
but I mean, of the
Yeah,
two
Frank
options
has
of
good
the Civil
aesthetics.
War, of the two main options of the Civil War, I would have picked him over the
No,
Republicans.
that's honestly like the litmus test you need to have with people, like whether they are your friend or enemy distinction. You ask them simply, who would have you sided with in the Spanish Civil War? If they would have sided with the Republicans, you know that they are evil. If they would have sided with Franco, they are on your side.
Okay, that's a good test because I've done that before in high school. I've done that, and it works every time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just a litmus test.
I'm not really sure I agree with that.
Well, I mean, I guess you could make the question broader. Would you have sided with the Nationalists, which at the time was Franco, and the Carlists, and the other?
Yeah,
monarchists?
that's what I do. I describe like each faction within the faction. Like like you had like the anarchists, the codlists, the fascists, etc., etc.
And if you didn't support the
like
Carlists,
the Phalangists weren't really fascists. Like they did have some fascists within the
Well,
Phalange, but they weren't. They weren't
it's like the
fascists.
same, like the same general. Or no, in like the same way that like North Korean Juche or whatever is in like the same general camp as like Leninism. Or whatever. It's like a broad strokes kind of thing.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Phalangism advocate for a strong relation between church and state, whereas
Yes.
so it wouldn't be the same animating principle, so they wouldn't be that related in the anyways.
Well, yeah, except that the way that they pursued that, and so far as you would consider Franco a Phalangist, at least, he was kind of more an opportunist, to be fair. But, I mean, he basically just assumed power over things like appointing the bishops. So, I mean, it's like, yes, we're going to remove the separation by giving me all the power over it. Which, I mean,
I will agree with him here because Franco did consolidate like the multiple like far right factions under his own control and basically nitpick it. Well, what do I want to take from each of these factions? The Phalangists, the Codlists, etc., into the Francoist state.
Well,
but speaking of the Spanish Civil War, go on.
I mean, I'm just have to say this. It's like, it's a civil war. You don't want factionalism while you're fighting an like a truly evil force like the Republicans. Like, the Republicans were genuinely evil. And if you have to, like, negotiate with the Phalange to get them on your side, to have a common enemy, a common struggle against the Republic, I would honestly say that'd be worth it in the long run. Like, you get all these different factions that in theory should be opposed to each other, but in reality, if you put them around a uniting figure that can moderate all of them like Franco was, then that's the best thing that you can do.
I wouldn't go so far as to say that he was a moderating figure.
I mean, he was a monarchist, yes, but he could reach across the aisle and like talk with others.
He was a monarchist insofar as he theoretically said he was, and he technically recreated the throne, but then he left it vacant for decades because he wanted to be in power. Like, he was a monarchist insofar as he had to be to retain the amount of support he needed from the Carlists.
I mean, like, he even like compromised between like the Carlists weren't the only monarchists. They were like about roughly half of the monarchists. The other half of the monarchists were the legitimists, and
to retain the support he needed from the monarchists.
Yeah, and that's why he also did like a compromised dynasty where he did technically somebody from both the Carlist line and the Legitimist line, which that's the current line that's ruling Spain right now of the Bourbon dynasty. Which King Felipe II is also like he's like we did a meme of him earlier, but he is literally physically massive as an individual. Like a lot of monarchs are like very tall. If you like actually look at history, like a lot of them are like 6'5", giant genetic beasts.
Oh yeah, like the king of Württemberg. I forget which one. The one that like fought during Napoleon's time.
Tsar Alexander was like 6'7" or something. It's insane.
Okay, so what you're saying is that a monarchist basketball league made up of monarchs would be
all the imagine like Queen Victoria's grandchildren just getting in as a basketball team. Like that picture of like the 10 monarchs that are like at her funeral. No, not at her funeral, but at King Albert's funeral. Edward's funeral, yeah. They're all in like basketball uniforms instead of their
they got the drip.
You poor members of the American working class. Think you've come up with a game for yourselves? Well, too bad. We're about to show you that we Europeans still have something to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
No, but speaking of the Spanish Civil War and how factionalism can ruin your side, like because I know like the last year or two the anarchists and the communists just had like their own civil war in Catalonia before Franco marched in. Those major news from a few days ago, and that being the last leader of the Soviet Union dying.
Yeah.
You're naturally phasing into our next topic. How dare you?
Yes.
Are we all good to move on?
Okay. No, hold on. I have to make a counterpoint to the concept here of the factionalism issue, and that's that there is also the danger of whoever you decide to form a faction with essentially parasitizing you, or you know what I mean, which is essentially what happened in the French Revolution, to be honest. The basically worst people involved used everybody else to take power, and that's how you got the Jacobins doing the Reign of Terror and all that.
Choppy.
Yeah. I mean, but that's revolutionaries banding together, and we don't like that. That's why, like, it's based when there's factional infighting between leftists.
There were moderates who didn't even want to get rid of the king.
Well, yeah, I know there was moderates.
Yeah, but that's my point. Is like they never should have worked with the radicals.
Well, yeah, but technically, I consider anybody that wants a constitutional monarchy is also like disloyal.
Yeah, well, I'll fight you on that.
Okay, whatever.
I'm making a
joke. Now
anyway.
Anyone have any final thoughts?
No.
No.
No,
just making sure.
Right.
All right. So now, who proposed Gorbachev originally? Will did, or somebody?
Oh well. Okay. I think it may have been Will, but Will, do you mind if I take the lead on this?
Go ahead. No one
Thank you.
needs to.
Okay, thank you. Former president of the Soviet Union, the final leader of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, just died at the age of 92 earlier this week.
91.
91. Thank you, Leon. Mikhail Gorbachev was the leader of the Soviet Union when Reagan famously said, "Tear down this wall," at the Berlin Wall, which was referring to, of course, the divide of Germany after World War II, you know the rest.
Which Germany is still divided to this day.
Correct.
East Germany is still occupied by those Poles and Russians and Lithuanians.
Anyway, thank you for the exposition, Verdorf.
Rightful Polish clay.
No.
Well,
thank you for
here's
that. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Darth. Let us move on to Gorbachev. Gorbachev is viewed by the Russians as he did it at the wrong time. He did the right thing at the wrong time. The West emphasizes the right thing half. Russia, emphasizes the wrong time half. And he is viewed in Russia as sort of a devil.
Wait, what's the wrong time element here?
Well, that the reforms came a little too late to have any effect on actually saving the Soviet Union.
Oh, so okay.
Go on, Victor.
Gotcha.
So, what I want to know what everyone's general thoughts are about Mikhail Gorbachev and sort of just taking a very 50,000 foot view holistic approach. And I suppose we should go around the room here. Starting with the first person on the list here, which is Darth.
Well, my opinion of Gorbachev is, I mean, I will give the benefit of the doubt to anybody that like truly believes in what they're doing, even if it is something I fundamentally believe is not right. And I will give him that he attempted to reform the Soviet Union into something more workable, that he tried to generally improve the lives of the average Russian, that he generally wanted to see his nation thrive into the future. But that didn't end up happening. And we can berate him all day. Well, not necessarily us, but like say tankies and stuff will like berate him for being too liberal or not being like hard enough or not being like a truly Soviet enough. But he kind of did see that like the different nationalities were tearing the USSR apart, and he wanted to make it a system that could live into the future, kind of like how Franz Ferdinand wanted to reform the Austrian Empire, but then he was shot by a Serbian. Which I kind of also see like Gorbachev as like the Franz Ferdinand figure of understanding that the empire needed change, but wasn't able to implement it.
Coaching?
I mean, I'm generally against empires in the sort of literal sense, so I'm in favor of the dissolution of the USSR. So if him waiting so long was responsible for that, then I would say that's a good thing.
Well, I mean, it's not that he waited so long, it's just by the time he got in power, it was too little too late. But,
well, yeah.
I was going to say, oh, are you done?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, I was gonna say, well, he's a commie or something like that, but he wasn't too proud to pull the Soviets out of Afghanistan because he knew the situation was untenable and that it was just going to be a waste of all these young lives. I guess I don't know if he was thinking of both sides, but on both sides, all these terrible. I mean, if you can't win, why send more of your young men to die for no good reason? So that is something that I can say to his favor, that he wasn't too proud to continue the whole struggle. And so he really can't be blamed for all the for all the calamity that his predecessors caused when they invaded the place in the first place and tried to overthrow the government and overthrow the Afghan monarchy and all that.
That George Bush refused to reinstate, by the way.
Yeah. And so I guess in that sense, I can appreciate him, and I haven't delved too deep into his personal life, what he believed, if he remained if he was an atheist throughout his entire life, or if he eventually found probably be orthodoxy, but hey, it's better than
That they're still apostolic brothers at the end of the day.
they're still apostolic,
Well,
but yeah,
if Gorbachev was a true communist, he might have very well been an atheist.
yeah, that's what saying. He probably, if he was general secretary of the Communist Party, he was probably an atheist at the time, or at least publicly one.
Although it's funny, like the modern day Russian Communist Party, they actually say, "Oh yeah, Russian Orthodoxy is totally compatible with the Communist Party." It's so funny and ironic.
Meanwhile, in the Catholic Church, it was automatic excommunication to support the Communist Party, but anyways,
was
at least
that
in Italy.
lifted?
I don't know if it's been lifted, but
no, it has not.
Doesn't it still apply?
Yeah, I'm gonna assume it still applies, but it's not
Well,
like
there you go.
anybody is. It's not like anyone's dishing out.
If you have to emphasize it, that means that you're getting weak, essentially.
Yeah,
like that's.
Yeah, but no. So but no. I mean, so I guess my view of Gorbachev, he may not have been the ideal ruler because he still tried to. He still was a communist, although he wanted, he didn't necessarily, he wanted to preserve the Soviet Union. That didn't necessarily mean he wanted to preserve the Soviet part of it. I think he was open to it being a more free, a non-communist union, so long as the union itself was still there. Which would have meant an easier time, if the Russian, Tsardom was actually restored. You wouldn't have to go and say like, "Hey guys, you want to come back?" because everyone would already have been there. But yeah, no. I mean, I will say that he may not have been the best ruler, but I think that on those two, on the front of pulling troops out of Afghanistan, I think the more I think about it, I think that was a good thing, especially because we just we it took us 20 years to finally leave, and how many Americans and Afghanis had to die in that time. I mean, how many had to die for no reason, especially given that everything went back to the way it was before. All right, Vic.
Gorbachev's legacy will be, as I said, his legacy will depend on who you ask about. And that is all I'll say.
Leon?
Well, I'll say this. In my view, Mikhail Gorbachev was a great man, and even though he was an official member of the Soviet Communist Party, he will always remain one of my greatest political heroes, because he did not what the special interest groups within the CPSU wanted, or any of the Soviet princelands or whatever. No, he did what was necessary for the Soviet peoples, not just the Russians, but the Ukrainians, the Lithuanians, the Kazakhs, etc. And like you said, he ended the Afghanistan war for the Soviets. He liberalized the political and economic system for the Soviet people. He stuck out his hand across the aisle with Reagan, who at the time was saying that the USSR was an evil empire again, in order to denuclearize the world a little bit and restore German unification. Yes, he was responsible at the time for, not just at the time, but he is responsible for the USSR collapsing. But the collapse of the evil empire was still the fall of an evil empire for a greater future to marvel.
So I'm just looking at. I'm sorry for interrupting, but I'm just looking at the personal life thing on the Gorbachev on the Wikipedia page, because Wikipedia is the source and summit of all truth. And the first thing in the personal life section is, by 1955 his hair was thinning, and by the late 1960s he was bald. Like that's the most important thing to talk about. What the guy's okay. I mean, I guess
that hairline, man.
I mean,
right. So
that is odd. That is very odd. Oh, I'm playing Poi 4, and France went down a no-no path. I'm sure we are all aware of what that is. Oh no, France, what are you doing? France is always up to something in the world, by the way. Let us praise that monarchist that slapped the Republican leader, called Macron. I think even like that monarchist that slapped Macron, like shouted a phrase from the Vendée War. By the monarchists of the Vendée War.
If I attack, follow me. If I retreat, shoot me. If I die, avenge me.
It was more brief than that, so I don't think it was that specific quote.
Are we ready to move on?
I believe
So
we
what
are.
about Will?
This is actually a local topic for me. On August 30th, earlier this week, a man by the name of Donovan Lewis was shot in his apartment in bed by Columbus police. This has become quite controversial due to the nature of him being unarmed and, as said, shot in his bed shortly after the police opened the doors. They were coming to serve him a warrant to him for several crimes, including assault and domestic violence. But at the time of the raid, it was 2 in the morning, and he was in his room, and as I've already said, they shot him dead. So I wanted to take a moment on the podcast for us to discuss what we thought about it.
What was he voting for?
Who was he voting for? I don't know.
No, the voting. Like, why did they want to arrest him? Like, was it
Uh,
drugs or something?
He was wanted for assault and domestic violence.
Oh, I mean, you can.
Saying he was a good person. I'm just saying
Why'd they
he
shoot him?
deserved to get gunned down in his own bed.
Have the police said why they shot him?
Well, they have released the body cam footage. They said they thought the vape pen in his hand was a gun, which I don't know how you could see a vape pen and think gun.
No, okay. I will come to the defense of the police here because, like, I've been put into those situations where you're room clearing, and I mean only in a training situation, but honestly, like, one of my NCOs did have something that wasn't a firearm in his hand, but in the moment, you don't take a risk like that. And I'll just say I was using paint bullets, and I lit 2 rounds into his chest and then 1 into his helmet. And he told me that was actually like the right thing to do because if you're unable to identify if it's a weapon or not, you always assume that it is a weapon, especially if you're going into a possibly hostile situation. But that's from the military perspective. I've never been through police training specifically.
Well, the big thing is they had a canine unit. So usually with canine units involved, they would send a dog in first because the dogs are usually trained for dealing with armed and dangerous subjects because the dogs are usually trained to go after the arm that's holding the weapon. So I don't know why they didn't send the dog in first to basically handle the situation and then go in after the dog because they had a dog and they brought the dog in, so I feel like that could have easily disarmed the situation and Donovan could have lived.
I mean, it's always. I mean, I'm going to do something unheard of for me, and I'm going to say I have not looked at the situation myself. I am not an expert. I am not going to cast judgment one way or the other. But all I will say to that, what you just said, is that usually in these situations, there's always some way that it could have been done better in hindsight.
And that's always a hindsight thing as well. So yeah.
And it's tragic, and honestly, it deserves to be investigated. I can understand why some people will be upset about this. I'm a little upset about this because Ohio, as a citizen of Ohio, we are an open carry state. We have constitutional carry. I do keep a firearm in my room, and the idea of someone busting down the door in the middle of the night and shooting me in my room because I respond the only way that feels natural if someone kicked in the door to my room. And then it being justified because I had a weapon seems kind of crummy to me.
Yeah, it's
I have a question. It's a controversial question.
like controversial.
What race was he? The victim in this case.
African American. Oh, this might start another BLM craze, and I'm not really looking forward to Columbus.
That's what I was thinking.
Well, if it was, never mind. You know what? I'm not going to. It's one of those little. It's going to be one of those statistical anomalies that isn't reflective of policing as a whole, that just gets blown out of proportion. Like I think that if you're a black man in this country, you have a higher chance of getting struck by lightning than you do being killed unarmed by the police. I mean, because it happens less than 100 times a year. But you know, it's just because something that rare. I mean, it's like when a plane crashes. I mean, nobody you know, unless somebody important, well, you know, somebody famous rather was in a car accident. You never hear about car accidents on the national news unless it was particularly bad or anything. But I don't even know if even then. But with but you always hear about airplane crashes. But you know, statistically speaking, commercial airliners are a lot safer than traveling by you know, train or automobile. But you know, you always, and even nowadays, passenger locomotives are still are pretty safe, assuming assuming the driver doesn't, you know, have a heart attack at the wheel and keep the dead man switch triggered. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that it's a tragedy. I'm not saying because it doesn't happen, because it only happens for you know, infrequently, it doesn't mean that, you know, we shouldn't, you know, I mean, the police shooting someone unarmed when they could have taken him alive, you know, you should always see if was there a way to prevent that. But you know, it's one of those things that, I mean, it's going to get a lot more attention than all the instances where we shot someone who was armed, because statistically speaking, that happens more often. You know, it's just the way the media, it's just the way media attention works. People aren't interested in the mundane, as weird as that sounds. You know, police having to shoot somebody who's shooting back at them would be considered mundane. Although even that, I highly doubt police are getting into those kinds of gunfights all the time. But yeah. I don't know. I said it with too much airtime. Does anyone else have any
No.
Thoughts on what?
thoughts on just the shooting or policing in general? Or
Well, my quick thought is that I pray that sanity will prevail and the body cam footage results in the appropriate action being taken, whatever that action may be.
Agreed.
yeah, so long. I mean, justice, I think, is probably the primary, you know, concern here. And you know, I don't know, man, because another round of rioting and looting is not going to help anybody. You know, and it's, you know, I don't want to go through another summer 2020. I really don't want to go through another summer 2020, man. I don't I can't take that. I can't.
Trust me, I'm not in the National Guard component, but I have friends that are, and they don't want to either. So, the men in uniform don't want it either.
Yeah, I mean, I already had an episode titled "Take a Chill Pill," so that can't be the episode title for this week.
We could call it "Take a Chill Pill 2."
I'll have to come up with something.
Well, we could just not title episodes and just call it episode 53.
That's a little utilitarian.
Yeah, that's a bit bland, to be honest. I'm going to agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, we're
All
not.
right, we can talk about this off.
No, I'm gonna be too tired to talk about this off air. But all right. So does anyone have any final thoughts before we wrap up in totality?
Yes, I would like to wish anyone that celebrates this day, the day the podcast is being released, I would like to wish everyone a happy Labor Day to those that actually celebrate that particular secular day. Just know that the history of Labor Day, we actually discussed that on, I believe it was episode 2 of this podcast, which would have corresponded with Labor Day last year. So if you want to learn about the history of Labor Day, you can go back into the archives to episode 2, but just briefly, if anyone wants to give that particular history, this is your opening to do so.
I don't remember us doing that, but then again, I wouldn't be surprised if we did. Well, I'm sure high school senior me could explain it better than I could, but essentially, it was a holiday created by a bunch of unions who wanted a day off for no reason.
I mean, I'm not so opposed to unions anymore.
I'm not opposed to unions because the Pope said I can't be. Not this Pope, the previous Pope, but still, like if you're gonna insist on a national day off, like guys, it's called Holy Days of Obligation.
Well, if the secular authorities and the bourgeois authorities recognized it, then yeah.
There's no reason that only holidays.
For week forward, let's just give some examples here. I know this may sound a little off, but just to give some, shall we say, incentive. I suppose one could move Flag Day from July 14th, or whenever Flag Day is, I forget, to December 8th to give a secular reason for Catholics to be off of Immaculate Conception. Of course, nobody gets off for Flag Day, but I'm trying to come up with a federal holiday that doesn't really need to be on that particular date, and just put it on a holy day of obligation, etc., etc.
Sorry for yawning. That's missing the point. You should just have the holy day of obligation off because it's a holy day of obligation. I mean, the secular calendar should revolve around the religious calendar, not the other way around.
Yes,
we have
integralism.
Work has to give you vacation days and stuff. So
well, yeah, I mean, you can have vacation days, but I don't. I mean, like, if you're gonna have national.
My point is, like, if you do that, then everybody's gonna want one for their everybody's gonna want all of their religion's holy days off, and
you don't oblige them.
I mean,
I have to ask.
Yeah, but
who
that
else
has its own
Catholics
obvious
celebrate
problems.
Oh, boo.
Let Kosh finish, and then you can counter his point.
You could just not do it, but that has its own obvious problems. And if you do it, then you just end up having too many days of the year where people don't know.
Well, that's why you have glorious Catholic confessional state. I mean, I guess everyone.
No, it doesn't. You are missing the point.
I mean,
there is no issue with a Catholic confessional state.
From a practical standpoint.
Who cares about practicality?
For right now, from a practical standpoint, it's impractical. impractical. Practically speaking, impractical. But
yes, and right now we live in the present, so
yes, I know. Right now we live in the present, but that doesn't mean that we can't suggest things that might be in a future reality that work. I mean, we're like this is
sure. If we had a situation like that, then that would be different. But that's not really what I was talking about.
okay. I mean, right now, I don't know. As long, I guess another thing is if we're going to have these secular days off, I think that they should be something for the nation as a whole, like Independence Day or celebrating a great military victory. You know, something the entire nation can rally behind, as opposed to just the working class.
I mean, yeah, if any class is going to get that, I think the working class is the best one to get it. To be fair.
No,
I mean, yeah, given
all
history,
castes,
the walking class needs to be satisfied.
well, I mean, all castes need their days of honoring. You need the warrior caste needs their days, the priestly caste needs their day, the proletariat
Well,
needs their days, and the peasantry
well,
needs their days.
I'll say this is that we, you know, the walkers and the warriors, we get this, we have satisfaction there. Okay, we got Labor Day and we have Memorial and Veterans Day for the warriors. Farmers, I agree, we could use like our more agrarian brothers. They could have more recognition, but with such vague caste building like that, I mean, you're gonna run into the thing where it's like people are gonna say, "What about Billionaires Day? You know, that looks horrible." I mean,
That's part of the bourgeois caste, and honestly, I would never honor the bourgeois.
Well, exactly.
They have their day.
Right.
Every
They
day,
have
every
they
Right.
have
year.
their day every day. The stores are open.
Yep.
Right. And just as a sort of point to close off on, and yes, because I did it originally, I think I'm the one that should be continuing this. September is National Suicide Prevention Month. If you or someone you know is experiencing suicidal thoughts or tendencies, please call the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. And I probably should have this number in front of me, but I don't, so I apologize.
the number will be in the description.
Yeah, it'll be in the description like
Yes.
I put it in last time.
Yes, the number will be in the description. Thank you very much for this public service announcement. And Charles, if as long as no one has any objections, I believe you can do the outro proper.
Okay, no one has any final things they want to say?
9.
9 things you want to say? Wow. Okay. Nope. Everyone? Okay. Okay. All right. So, if you would like to join us live on Monarchist Minute, you can join our Discord, link in the description below, where we record on normally at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We also have various social medias which you can observe, and including Twitter, Gab, Instagram, the Facebook, and we even have our own website where hopefully I'll have something cooking for you in the relative near future. And also, I guess, in audio form on this channel, but no spoilers. So, with that being said, now it is time to conclude in prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. So until next week, may God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.